The Final Fantasy series has been going now for almost 40 years, and sure, there might have been fans in the beginning that are still fans now, but what about the newer people that are just jumping into the games? There's a lot to learn about, and more importantly, appreciate when it comes to this long-standing and iconic franchise. And the thing that I find most interesting when looking back is when the series started to get really good. So in today's video, I want to highlight the golden era of Final Fantasy, when exactly it happened and what it did for the rest of the series. Before we get to that though, don't forget to like and subscribe because 87% of the people that watch my channel are not currently subscribed, so support your smaller content creators and leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the golden era of Final Fantasy. Let's go. So let's set the tone here with a bit of a background on the series and the people that made the games. It all starts with Hironobu Sakaguchi, a game designer at Square, a Japanese video game developer and publisher. Now there's this rumor or myth that in the 1980s Square was really struggling financially and Final Fantasy was more than a title, a last-ditch effort, one last roll of the dice for the company. No, that's not necessarily true. It did come down to a few things though. Sakaguchi wanted the game to be abbreviated to FF, which sounded nice in English and Japanese. He wanted to give game development one last try and embarked on a project that he felt was his Final Fantasy, hence the name of the game. This ended up being Sakaguchi's last effort, obviously casting all caution to the wind and just seeing what happened. Back in 2007, in an interview with Famitsu, Sakaguchi said, "The name Final Fantasy was a display of my feeling that if it didn't sell well, I was going to quit the games industry and go back to university. I'd have to repeat a year so I wouldn't have any friends. It really was a final situation." So no, not the end of the road for Square, but Sakaguchi. Sakaguchi, along with a small team of developers, including Nobuo Uematsu, which is a composer of course, and Yoshitaka Amano, an artist, began to work on what would become Final Fantasy. The game was heavily inspired by Sakaguchi's love for Western RPGs, Dungeons & Dragons, the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, science fiction and mythology, as well as his desire to create a fantasy epic that would captivate players. So finally released in 1987, Final Fantasy was a role-playing game that followed the journey of four heroes, the Warriors of Light, as they embarked on a quest to save the world from darkness. It featured turn-based battles, a fantasy setting, and an expansive world for players to explore. In its initial release, Final Fantasy enjoyed moderate success in Japan, but it wasn't an overnight sensation. At the time of its release, the RPG genre was not really established in the West as it would later become, and Japanese RPGs were relatively known outside of Japan. However, within Japan, Final Fantasy gained a dedicated fanbase due to its compelling gameplay and expansive world. Now, despite initial skepticism from Square's management, Final Fantasy proved to be a commercial success in Japan and received positive reviews from players and critics alike. Its success led to the creation of a franchise that would go on to become one of the most iconic and influential in the history of video games. As with any good series or franchise that gets traction, we're eventually going to see sequels or spin-offs, and that leads us to the golden era of Final Fantasy. Now, in an effort to not have an hour-long video describing the golden era from top to bottom, I'm just going to pick one defining feature from these games, describe it, and mention why I think it is a golden era title. Now, while the NES titles Final Fantasy 1 through 3 were great, I feel they were more for getting a feel for how the series worked. Because in my opinion, and I've said this many times here before on this channel, it started to get really good around 1991. Final Fantasy 4 marked a significant leap forward with its compelling and emotionally resonant storytelling. The game features a rich narrative filled with memorable characters, dramatic plot twists, and thematic depth, which captivated players from the very start. From the opening moments, players become emotionally invested in the journey of Cecil as he grapples with themes of redemption, sacrifice, and identity. The interactions and growth of not just Cecil, the rest of the party throughout the game adds a significant amount of emotional resonance to the story. The story of Final Fantasy IV delves into the conflict of light and darkness, from Cecil's journey to self-discovery and struggle against the malevolent Golbez and the ancient evil of Zemus. The game's epic scope and grandiose storytelling immerses players in a world full of adventure and peril. It's a story filled with iconic moments like Cecil's transformation from a Dark Knight to a Paladin, the sacrifice of Tella, the redemption of Cain, or the tragic fate of characters like Palom and Porum. The game is replete with emotionally charged scenes that resonate with players long after they finish the game. The game explores complex themes such as redemption, loyalty, friendship, and the nature of good and evil. Through its characters' struggles and choices, Final Fantasy IV prompts players to contemplate deeper questions about morality, identity, and the human condition, elevating the game beyond mere entertainment to a profound and thought-provoking experience. Next up, while it might not be remembered for the story or the characters that occupy it, I personally love them, but the thing that really defines Final Fantasy V is the deep and engaging job system, which offers players unparalleled customization and strategic depth. Initially introduced in Final Fantasy I, tweaked in Final Fantasy III, and then later refined in V, the job system allows characters to change classes or jobs, granting access to unique abilities and attributes associated with each job. Final Fantasy V's job system offers players a high degree of flexibility in customizing their party members' abilities and roles. With 22 jobs to choose from in the Super Nintendo version or 26 in the Game Boy Advance version, players have the freedom to mix and match job combinations to suit their preferred playstyle and strategy. This flexibility encourages experimentation and strategic planning, as players must consider the strengths and weaknesses of each job. Additionally, mastering multiple jobs allows characters to unlock powerful combinations known as job abilities, which can turn the tide of battle when used strategically. The depth of gameplay keeps players engaged and rewarded as they explore the possibilities of different combinations and tactics, which leads me to my next point: replayability. Final Fantasy V enhances the game's replay value by offering multiple paths for character development and experimentation. Players can replay the game with different job combinations to experience new strategies and challenges. Speaking of challenges, did you know that I have a brand new podcast called Turn-Based? Well, in the first episode, I'm joined by someone who specializes in doing JRPG challenge runs, Tanticles. You can watch the video or listen on the go with Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you get your podcasts for that matter. Check it out, give it a follow for weekly long-form content, and make sure to leave a review too. All the links are down below. Overall, Final Fantasy V's job system is probably the biggest part of its excellence, offering players a rewarding and customizable gameplay experience that has stood the test of time. And because of this, Final Fantasy V remains as one of the most beloved and iconic games in the JRPG genre. When Final Fantasy VI is talked about, storytelling and gameplay mechanics are undoubtedly crucial aspects of the game's success. But in this video, I wanted to highlight the immersive world building and meticulously crafted setting, which has captivated players with its depth, detail, and atmosphere since 1994. Final Fantasy VI stands out for its diverse range of locales, from small towns to desolate wastelands, lush forests to towering mountains. Each location is designed and rendered with vibrant 16-bit graphics and atmospheric music, immersing players in a world that feels alive and full of possibilities. Whether exploring the town of Narsh after seeing the intro sequence, the industrial city of Vector on a quest to infiltrate the Empire, the mystical realm of the Espers, or the ruins of the floating continent, players are continually rewarded with new areas to soak in as the adventure continues. Final Fantasy VI is steeped in lore and history, with a rich tapestry of myths, legends, and historical events that shape the world and its inhabitants. The game's backstory, including the rise and fall of the Gestalian Empire, the War of the Magi, and the cataclysmic events that reshape the world, this all adds a lot of depth and context to the narrative, providing players with a sense of the world's past and the forces that drive the present conflict. Environmental storytelling is easily one of the most underrated aspects of Final Fantasy VI, being used to convey its world-building elements, sometimes subtly, sometimes more in your face. The game's environments tell a story of their own, hinting at the world's history and the consequence of human ambition and folly. Lastly on our Golden Era list is Final Fantasy VII, widely regarded as a landmark title for its groundbreaking use of 3D graphics and cinematic presentation, which elevated storytelling and immersion to new heights in video games at the time. Final Fantasy VII was one of the first RPGs to utilize fully 3D polygonal graphics, a significant departure from the 2D sprites of its predecessors. The game's detailed character models, environments, and pre-rendered backgrounds set a new standard for visual fidelity in video games at the time of its release. The transition to 3D allowed for more immersive and cinematic storytelling, dramatic cutscenes, and stunning visual effects that brought the game's world to life in unprecedented detail. The game's narrative, which follows the journey of Cloud and his allies as they battle the malevolent Shinra and the enigmatic Sephiroth, unfolds like an epic film with memorable characters, plot twists, and emotional moments that still continue to resonate with players long after 1987. Thanks to things like pre-rendered cutscenes and expressive character animations, which really elevated the game's storytelling to a level rarely seen in games at the time. The combination of immersive visuals and the cinematic storytelling, thanks to the graphics, imbues the game with a powerful and emotional resonance that, again, still resonates with players even now. From the heartbreaking loss of Aerith to the climactic showdown with Sephiroth atop the Northern Crater, the game's memorable moments are heightened by its use of expressive presentation, drawing players into the drama and the intensity of the narrative in a way that few games had achieved before. The use of 3D graphics and cinematic presentation had a profound impact on the gaming industry and popular culture, inspiring a generation of developers and artists, and also helping to popularize the RPG genre worldwide. The game's iconic characters, settings, and music have become enduring symbols of the Final Fantasy series and are celebrated by fans around the world. Now, I hear some of you already. You didn't include Final Fantasy 8 or 9 or even 10. Now, yes, I do agree that each game, especially the 8 to 10 range, may have many strengths, but I personally think that 4 to 7 really defined the series and set the rest of the games up for success in a number of ways, but especially because of the key points I mentioned in today's video. But hey, if you disagree, that's fine too. Sure, there's a golden era for Final Fantasy, but you could also say that every game is golden in its own right. So thanks for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, hit the video here for more content, and check the description to check out my brand new JRPG podcast called Turn Based. See you again on the next video. Ta-da!